It's a tricky one with Richmond, I feel, because you're pretty much born into being a Richmond supporter. With those like traditional clubs like Richmond, Carlton, Essendon, you're sort of brought into it, being given no choice. And because we do have those strong traditions and, a really strong history as well, I think, we can put on the best experience possible and try and get people to come to our games. And we are lucky, games like Dreamtime, a lot of just your footy fans will come as well, not necessarily just Richmond and Essendon. But something that we're trying to do is, build on how we communicate with kids, and because, when you go to school and kids are easily influenced by those around them, you want to try and grab a few extra Richmond supporters around that time. So that's a big focus for us. But we have an amazing team at Richmond who, work together week and week to try and get new people to our games and, try and promote it heavily to get them to come to the MCG and watch us.
G'day guys, coming up on the show today is Shayla Clarke. Shayla is the Audience Growth and Engagement Coordinator at Richmond Football Club. After completing a Bachelor of Business, she furthered her studies and in the 6 years since has progressed through multiple roles during premiership winning seasons. Lots to look out for, including how to get a job in the AFL, how to progress and be promoted at work, and how to grow and engage an audience as big as the Richmond Football Club. Let's go.
I started volunteering.
It's all about who you know in sport.
Am I going to be calling the last 10 seconds of the grand final?
You can connect with the interviewer. The hand goes up when they've got to make a decision.
Having a network is one of the most important things you can do.
I didn't necessarily follow my passion. I followed my curiosity.
Once you've worked in sport, there's no going back.
And then lo and behold, before I left, I got offered 2.
Hello and welcome to the SportsGrad podcast, the ultimate guide to make it in the sports industry. I'm Ryan Walker, and each week I'm joined with the one and only Ruben Williams, where we learn how people made it in the sports industry. We tease out their career decisions, work habits, skills, and everything they do that makes them great, all so that you can learn how to get in, get promoted, and get thriving in the sports industry. It's just me introducing the show today, but it has been a huge few weeks at SportsGrad HQ, having finished up our meetup round in Brisbane last week, as well as our first ever International Women's Day event on Friday, which was just incredible and so good to celebrate. Such a great day in sport, but also globally as a whole. So it was fantastic to see so many familiar faces and meet some new people as well. Now, usually we start our episodes with a bit of a community update, and just because it is me today, that won't stop. So got a few wins here we want to do a bit of a call out for from our community. The first one is Derek Lee. Derek's been a member for a little while, so good on you, Derek. He's the new footy ops coordinator at the mighty Uni Blues. I may have a bit of a biased opinion on that one, given I played there for a few years. The next one is Marinda Kidman. She's a delegation officer at the 2025 World University Games over in Germany. So that is like a monster role. So congrats to you, Marinda. And Jordan Dana, one of our favourite members, has been a member for a little while. He's a new assistant strength and conditioning coach at the Box Hill Hawks. So great wins for all those members coming up. Now, in regards to what's happening in our community, as I said, it's been a huge few weeks, but it just doesn't stop, which is awesome. So first of all, we've got a speed networking event tonight. So if you're part of our community, you'll be attending that tonight, which is super exciting. We've got a job fair with the Victorian Institute of Sport happening this week as well. And then in a couple of weeks' time, I've got a masterclass on sports law with Michael Bricknell for our pro community as well. So there's lots happening, easy to keep up if you know where to look. So if you enjoy a quick email from us every Friday on all the latest job openings, networking events, Q&As, latest podcast episode, it just keeps going, then you can subscribe to our newsletter. Head to our website at sportsgrad.com.au/newsletter to subscribe to that one. Rubes is absolutely cooking it with our newsletter as of late, so it's must read. In the meantime, though, big episode with Shayla on the way, so grab a pen and enjoy this episode with Shayla Clarke. Shayla, welcome to the SportsGrad podcast.
Thank you for having me. Very excited.
Shayla, we normally talk about dream jobs in sport on this podcast, but we've just found out that you actually have a dream job in music as well. So between all sides of entertainment, there's not much free time. Can you tell us a bit about what you're doing in the music world?
Yeah, so I've pretty much just started my own little side hobby. So outside of sport, music is a massive passion of mine. I've got no talent whatsoever, but love listening to it, love going to live shows. So set up my own little review business. So just heading out to gigs and festivals and reviewing all of them where I can, and new albums, and hopefully in the future a few interviews and things like that. But yeah, it's a new side hobby for me.
How long have you been doing this for?
So I've only just launched it in the last month, but have been going to gigs pretty much weekly for about 5 or 6 years, not including the pandemic times. But yeah, it's definitely a big passion of mine outside of work.
Nice. And you just started writing about them straight away, or?
Yeah, so literally just go along, take notes, and then write a bit of a review after them. And then I've also worked with another company as well for probably the last 6 months doing that. So thought I'd set up my own little one and head to gigs that I like, and artists that I love as well. So yeah,
Nice.
Something different.
That's very cool.
Get essentially, you get to go to any event you like and write about it. Maybe we should do a sport one.
Yeah.
Review each team in the AFL and how they operate each of their games.
Yes.
Head along to the games.
Yeah,
Yep.
that makes sense.
Yep, I think so.
Shayla, we start our episodes. I'm sure you're a massive listener, by the way, so you know how this runs. But we do some quick fire questions to start, so our listeners, can learn a bit more about you before we get cracking. So I will start. What was your first ever job?
I worked in a seafood shop. So a bit of a different one. That was my job throughout high school and early uni days. I actually loved it.
Nice.
So yeah, that was it.
And what did you study at university?
Did a Bachelor of Business, majoring in Management and Public Relations, and then I've also done a dual diploma in Sport and Leadership and Management.
Nice. And your favourite sporting moment?
It would be in the 2009 AFL Grand Final, Geelong versus St Kilda, Paul Chapman, dying minutes, snap, goal, got us the win.
Yep, iconic moment. And do you have a favourite interview question that you like to ask of candidates?
I just like asking them why they want to work where. Like obviously for me at Richmond, I think just getting a really good understanding of what their passions are, what their motives are, just gives you a really good indication on whether they're suitable or not. Plus it just gives you a bit more insight into who they are as a person.
Nice. And what's one book or podcast that's helped you at work?
Dare to Lead, Brené Brown. I think her book just highlights that leadership, you're not necessarily born a leader, but, if you're really empathetic and, great with working with people and things like that, it's just a space that you can always grow and evolve in.
Love it. And what is one platform that you use at work that you couldn't live without?
Excel, 100%. I've got all my checklists, all my run sheets, all of that on Excel.
Nice. And finally, if you had 30 minutes to pick someone's brain, who would it be?
This one stumps me a little bit. I think as someone who loves music, it's a bit of an odd one, but Bruce Springsteen. Adore his music. He's obviously an old soul, rock and roller. But if you know his story a little bit, he's just someone who has never succumbed to the pressures of the industry, very much runs his own show. He's brilliant. So I think I would love to pick his brain a little bit.
The boss.
The boss. I was going to say. He played out here at Amy Park a couple of years ago, right?
Yeah, he did a couple of years ago.
Did you do a review on that?
I actually missed that one. I was away, so shattered. But yes.
I have to get him
would
back.
love to see
How
it.
old would he be now?
Oh, he'd be in his 70s.
Yeah.
Early 70s, I reckon.
Still going strong, the boss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully he's no older than that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once you start getting in the eights, it's like,
Yep.
just from the music industry, I would have thought.
Awesome. Can you tell us a bit about your role at Richmond, some of the best bits? What are you up to there at the moment?
Yeah, so I'm the Audience Growth and Engagement Coordinator. So it's essentially a fancy way of saying fan engagement. So my main role primarily is running our match days for our AFL and AFLW sides. So that's a big element. Obviously, we're in the off-season for both of those teams at the moment. So for, the AFL, it's just really getting planning for the season ahead, and we've had lots of activities over the last few weeks, like open trainings and match simulations. Just come back from community camp as well. Very much in the planning stages for the year ahead. But my favourite bits absolutely are just match days. I think, there's so much work and effort that goes towards them, and seeing it, rolling out in live time is just the most rewarding experience. So that's definitely the highlight of what I do.
Love it. I do admire the Richmond game day experience with their average 80,000 home crowd or something like that. It does look very, very cool to be a part of.
Tigers roaring after goals.
Yep.
Yeah.
Even the drums at the start.
Yeah.
Is that part of what you bought in, or like?
They've been going on for quite a while. So the good thing with Richmond is they are such a strong club and have been around for such a long time and have lots of traditions. So the drummers were before my time, but I do look after the drummers on our match days.
Nice. And are you are you in a box somewhere on during the game, or are you literally on the boundary line with like a spreadsheet there, obviously Excel, as you said? Like, you're literally on the ground putting this together, not sort of sitting back in the stands, watching it from above? On
the ground, definitely pre-game, pretty much don't leave that space. And then in the breaks, I'll either be in the race or up in having a bit of a break at halftime. It tends to be when we get a few minutes to stop. Yeah. But pretty close to the action, which is very exciting.
And what sort of the match day teams, I mean, part of when I was at cricket was, being in partnerships, you got to mix with a lot of teams, and on match day you're sort of working with a lot of different people. Is that similar for you, and sort of what different teams are you working with on match day? Yeah,
I guess the best part about my role as well is you do get to work with pretty much every single department in the planning, but then on match days as well. So for me personally, I'm only in a team of 2. So there's myself and my manager, but then, we've got a partnerships lead who helps with a lot of those activations on the day. So it's usually us 2 sort of running around on field trying to get those all up and running. But, we work with membership. So usually our Guard of Honour participants are members that we reward on the day. So, there's a whole bunch of different teams we work with to bring the game days to life.
When you say reward on the day, do these fans walk into the ground not knowing that they're going to be brought onto the MCG to be a part of the race?
Most of the time, Guard of Honour participants do know.
Okay.
So you actually have to register all their details and stuff like that beforehand. But for a lot of our activations, at quarter time and 3/4 time, we do like to reward those who are in the crowd. And it's handy, before the games, you sort of get to know what bays tend to have your rusted on members and how many times they come along throughout the season. So we do try and reward them where we can.
Nice.
Awesome. Can you run us through some of the different jobs and experiences you've had to get to this role? Because I believe you had a few different jobs at Richmond along the way. Yeah. So I guess the start of my journey at Richmond was I studied at Richmond Institute. So I'd done 2 years of my bachelor's degree at Swinburne, and I had what I like to call my mid-uni life crisis, where I was still really confused as to what I wanted to do as a career. And Bachelor of Business being so broad, I was, quite overwhelmed by it. It was a great course, but still just was not set on what my career was supposed to be. So being at Swinburne, I came across Richmond Institute, which is obviously the Richmond Football Club in Swinburne, and I went along to an open day. They told me all about it. I wasn't sure how it was going to go, going from a degree to diplomas, but just was obviously set on the fact that you got a lot of placements in that course. So when I was a student, I worked with the corporate team, I worked with the fan engagement team, and they were obviously just volunteer roles through the 2018 season. So, they'd just come off the back of the first grand final in a very, very long time. But I just got a really good insight into a lot of the teams at the club and really got to immerse myself in that experience. So that was probably, where my passion, I didn't even know fan engagement was really a job until I was at Richmond Institute. I didn't think I could make a career out of something like that at all. So at the end of that year, I was able to get a casual job at Richmond Institute as a bit of a student mentor, so helping the next cohort of students coming through the course, but then was offered a spot
in the fan engagement team, started as a casual and then went into a full-time role. So that was sort of the placement that I did to land that job that I'm still in.
Were there any moments where you thought, I've got no idea what this role involves, but I'm really enjoying it. I feel like I've found what I'm suited to. Were there any particular times you thought, okay, I've landed on my feet here?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the best part about that year I did with Richmond Institute was, I did a whole stack of other placements as well, like worked with player managers, worked at, a sports facility, did kids clinics, and it was a really good opportunity to see what you really liked and see what you didn't like. So, there was a period where I considered teaching, and then I worked with kids in the school holidays, and I was like, yeah, no, this is not for me. But then working with fan engagement on match days, and as someone who grew up loving football and, loving the experience of going to games and then being able to, in reverse, offer that to fans, I just absolutely loved it. And that's where I sort of decided to, that this is an area that I'd really like to work in.
Nice. This kind of shows you can have a crack at something, but you need some little bits of experience to figure out where you want to get to. And I think a lot of people get stuck on one thing and they get a little bit, worried that they don't know. But I think that's a classic example of, if you're out there, you're not really sure, just try a bunch of stuff and you'll find your feet eventually.
That's it. I think as well, it's so easy for people to go through that uni period and have no idea what they want to do unless they try all those different things. But for you, it seems like you've collected all these different data points and thought, I'm actually going to siphon through each of these little tests and then figure out, I've got this one thing a little left. Otherwise, you could have got to the end of your teaching degree and be like, oh, actually, I don't really like kids. And I'm day one of an entire school year.
100%. And I didn't have the luxury of knowing what I wanted to do post year 12. But I knew I wanted to go to uni or else I'd struggle to go into further study if I had a gap year or anything like that. So with a Bachelor of Business, it was so broad. And I think, having too many options sometimes can be quite overwhelming. But then going into a course that was sports specific, but then still learning about all the areas within sport, there are so many areas that you just do not even think about, that you don't even really know exist until you're really in the industry. It was just, more beneficial for me and figuring out what I wanted to do.
Well, you did well to get through the degree. Because I got halfway through my first degree in marketing at RMIT and then dropped out. I didn't quite have the patience. So kudos to anyone who can get through it.
And the benefit of doing that course was then I got credit points for my degree. So I only had to go back and do a handful of subjects.
Oh, perfect.
So within 3.5 years, I got a degree and 2 diplomas.
Nice.
Yeah.
Little cheat code there to Hey, speaking of sort of not knowing different parts of the industry, because I can tell you right now, when I was going through uni, I had literally no idea what fan engagement was. Where do you hear those words come together? Give us an insight of what does fan engagement sort of mean from your perspective? What do you do each match day? It's do you get there at this time? Take us through a bit of that journey.
I think for me, it's just wanting to put on the best experience for fans. So I guess a bit of an insight to game day and what that actually looks like. So I'll rock up a few hours before gates, print out all my run sheets, just make sure scripts and all of that are up to date. Being in footy, things can change quite quickly. So I try and leave that until the very last minute. And then how our games are set up really depends on a number of factors. So who you're playing, what time slot you're playing, do you have a match day partner or do you have a theme for that game as well? So if I'm doing a night game, probably not going to do a big kids zone in Yarra Park just because it's, not ideal. So for a day game, I'll get in and I'll go and set up that whole zone. So we work with a number of suppliers as well who help us put all of that together. But I just like to go and make sure it's all set and ready to go. And then head into the G, brief a number of volunteers. So I usually have about 8 to 10 Richmond Institute students helping me out on every game day. So, they'll help chaperone mascots or look after that kids zone that I was talking about. So make sure that they're all briefed and they all know what they're doing. And then we have production meetings. So head up into the media space and sit down with your match day producer and you really just go through your run sheet, make sure that everyone's on the same page. And then from there, head down onto the ground and sort of get ready for all our pre-match entertainment and activities. So one thing that sits in my role as well is like all your LEDs, your big screens, your music, all of that. So that's sort of things that we touch on in the production meeting as well. So I'm not sitting there, flicking on the LEDs, but I do all the scheduling or tell them, when we want certain things run at certain times. And then, on field, we usually do something called Homecoming Hero, so bring back an old Richmond player to get the first goal of the day. Like I said, depends on the theme of the match. So we're pretty lucky we have a few marquee matches at Richmond, things like ANZAC Eve and Dreamtime. So the pre-game really runs around what that theme is. And then team entry, so you mentioned it before, the drummers, guard of honour, banner, cheer squad, all of that stuff. And then you get into your minutes before the countdown. So we try and really, amp up the crowd and get them excited for the first bounce. So, that 60-second countdown is pretty crucial into building that match day experience and the hype into the lead up for a big game.
Got to time it right, eh?
You got to time it right. Yeah.
Are you in charge of the timer?
Well, it goes 60 seconds before the game is about to start. The only tricky thing is you got to hope just the umpire bounces the ball at the right time.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like you're relying on them to bounce it on zero.
So sometimes there's like, a 10-second pause. You're like, oh, no.
Yeah.
Sort of kill the mood a little bit. But
you notice it as well, don't you? As a fan.
Yeah.
Yep.
But there's little things that always happen on game day that I hope, I think as a fan going to a game you might not notice, but I'll probably pick up and be like, damn.
Yeah.
That song was
the timer was out.
Yeah. And then from there, go and have a quick break, and then we come back for quarter time, usually a partnership activation, halftime. Every now and then we'll do something during halftime, but that's pretty much like yours, kick kids playing their games in the centre of the field, and then 3/4 times another partner activation, and then hopefully we get a win so you can do some things post-match.
And then how long after the game are you sticking around for?
Depends if I need to pack up a lot, but usually probably just like half an hour post-game and then head back to the club. We're very lucky we can just walk to and from work, which is handy. I know obviously some clubs don't have that luxury and have to lug a car full of stuff to and from the MCG, but we just walk back.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, do you have any examples of something that hasn't gone to plan? And what have you done in that scenario? Because it all sounds very meticulous, but I'm sure there are times when, as good as your planning can be, things don't always pan out the way they should. Has that ever happened?
I'm pretty lucky I've been, there's not
maybe the planning is excellent.
Maybe it is meticulous.
Not too many instances where things have gone wrong. I think just like if you've got player interviews on the day, maybe they can't go ahead, so you've just got to try and find something to fill that time, or we have like wet weather plans, so being played in winter at the G with no roof, sometimes those things don't go to plan, and you can't, run them for obvious reasons. So we try and have backup plans where we think we need to. So, at 3/4 time, if you can't do your LED race, we'll try and do a quiz with that participant. So they're still getting something, fans are still getting something on the big screen. But no, I've been pretty lucky. I haven't had anything go terribly wrong.
Nice.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's always good.
Yeah. Hopefully it stays that way.
Yeah. You need to talk to one of our other SportsGrad Pro members, Nathan Peroni. He was recently down in Tasmania for an A-League match with Western United. And I think he was saying he did about 6 hours of signage setup, only for the Tasmanian weather to come in and just knock the entire thing over.
That'd be devastating.
Then they had to go and get temporary signage and all this other different stuff. So
that's devastating.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
I believe you are leading the ANZAC Day Eve match this year. Is that correct?
Yes.
What does that look like for you?
So leading it from Richmond's perspective, from a match day point of view, so ANZAC's a really special one. We do a really big pre-game ceremony, and it's our home game this year, so we take it in turns with Melbourne. So for that one, we actually work with an event planner outside of work, because there's lots of things that are involved, like the police, and we've got horses on field, and things that are probably just a little bit out of my range there. So we've got someone to light the cauldron and things like that locked in, but it's working really closely with footy operations, broadcast, the MCG themselves, just to make sure that everyone's on the same page, run sheets are good to go. I guess that one is a little bit difficult because you are working with things such as horses that can be very unpredictable in the moment. But no, it's a very exciting one. Looking forward to leading that one from Richmond's end this year.
And so will you get more opportunities after this to do other sort of leading of matches, or is this the first time you've done it? Or
I think a big marquee match like this, yes. And then we have Dreamtime a few weeks after. So one thing with us is we always get ANZAC and Dreamtime home games in the same year, and they tend to only be 4 weeks apart. So yeah, this will be the one that I lead, and then obviously support Dreamtime. But yeah, this is the big milestone one for me. I've been around for a few years now, so I'm very excited to take this one on board.
And how did this opportunity come up? Was it something that you were pushing for and asking for, or did Richmond say, hey, Shayla, this season we want you to step up? What did that look like?
Yeah, so I've been in the team now for about 5 years. So I think it's just like a natural progression to, be able to land something like this. And I've been around for a couple now when they are our home games. So I've, really been able to observe and learn about what is involved in planning, these pre-match ceremonies. So yeah, I think it's just time, and very excited to be given the opportunity.
Nice. Pretty cool to be at like such a big club, so you get all these humongous games,
Yeah.
It's pretty cool just from a career perspective to have those experiences. With those massive games in mind, like you guys obviously wanted to sell tickets and push that out to fans. Are there any ways or new ways that you're looking to hit fans and get them engaged in Richmond?
It's a tricky one with Richmond, I feel, because you're pretty much born into being a Richmond supporter. With those like traditional clubs like Richmond, Carlton, Essendon, you're sort of brought into it, being given no choice. And because we do have those strong traditions and, a really strong history as well, I think, we can put on the best experience possible and try and get people to come to our games. And we are lucky, games like Dreamtime, a lot of just your footy fans will come as well, not necessarily just Richmond and Essendon. But something that we're trying to do is, build on how we communicate with kids, and because, when you go to school and kids are easily influenced by those around them, you want to try and grab a few extra Richmond supporters around that time. So that's a big focus for us. But we have an amazing team at Richmond who, work together week and week to try and get new people to our games and, try and promote it heavily to get them to come to the MCG and watch us.
I did an internship with the Hawthorn Football Club years ago, and part of that involved going out to schools and running these like little footy clinics, and making sure you took tickets to the schools was always a big part of it, because if you can get a kid to one Hawthorn game, then hopefully they come back to another one and then they become a member, and then 50 years later, who knows how much money they've spent at the club, but it all starts in those schools.
100%, you got to get in when you can.
Yeah.
Is that like the main focus? Like you're just trying to speak to kids? It's pretty common now, but like, is that your number one strategy to sort of get new fans in?
I wouldn't say it's number one, but it definitely is a focus, and I think it's becoming a focus for a lot of clubs as well.
Yeah, but also like it's like, because you're such a traditional club, like if you look at, say, the Gold Coast Suns, they're like a brand new club, so they wouldn't have any, older supporters who have always gone from, so they would obviously be trying to just hit everybody.
Yeah.
But I guess with you guys, it's like you've got such a traditional fan base that it's like the only real logical step is to sort of go to kids, I suppose.
Yeah, and, we work closely with like AFL Victoria and Auskick and all of that. And, everyone's sort of got their zones that have been around for quite a while. So try and really target those areas, and, we run lots of kids activities on match days, but then clinics throughout the year to try and keep them or get them to become Richmond fans.
In terms of like, targeting people who aren't footy fans who are new to the game, I know Richmond's quite big in the multicultural space and people who are new to Melbourne.
Yep.
What sort of things are you doing in that area to create new Richmond fans?
Yeah, so we have a really good community team at Richmond. We've got things like, the Islamic College of Sport, Batahuli Foundation, Melbourne Indigenous Transition School. So we're very lucky, to have those facilities and those, aspects of the club that we do. So I think, we reach out to them, ticket offers, we try and get them immersed as often as we can, to come along to our games and to find out more about football and things like that. So really trying to connect to them in a number of different ways.
I've always admired Richmond for what they do in that space because they seem to be leading not just the AFL, but like Australian sport in general. And I know Rana Hussain came on the podcast last year. I think she was a multicultural manager there, or I forget what her title was. But yeah, she seemed like she did a terrific job, and the club looks like it's in a good space from that point of view. Yeah,
definitely. I think it is an area that we really excel in, and really excited to see how those can continue to grow in the future.
You've been around for a couple of premierships.
Two. 19 and 20.
Tell us a bit about what it's like when you're winning premierships. Is it a good place to be? What's the vibe like?
It's definitely an amazing place to be when you are winning flags. So 2019, or I guess going back to 2018 as a student, we got knocked out in the prelim against Collingwood, and I was shattered. And as someone who has grown up not a Richmond supporter, it was definitely weird feeling those kinds of emotions in a prelim where my team that I've grown up supporting wasn't playing. So that was heartbreaking. And then 2019, obviously won the flag there. And the prep that goes into grand final week is just next level from, the football team themselves and then admin staff. So, we were doing things like open training on the Friday beforehand. We're only a small place at Punt Road, but you fit thousands and thousands of people in there to watch the team train, and then you go and do the grand final parade. So I got to chaperone the mascots in that, which was pretty cool experience. And then you get to game day. So we held a live site at Punt Road for, I think it was 12,500 people, like a ticketed event. So we, put that together during that week, had someone contracted come in and actually run it for us so that we could go to the game. But being on field for team entry at that grand final, where it was probably 90-something thousand Richmond supporters and 5 GWS supporters. 5,000. I don't mean 5. I'm not mean
it
that
felt
bad.
like 5.
Was like, and being on field for that was just phenomenal. Like, the roar when the team came out was just next level, like goosebumps, everything. And then it was pretty clear from not far in that we were going to get that win. And then as soon as the final siren went, we quickly went down to the change rooms, celebrated a little bit, but then we had to get back to work. So we went straight back to the club and had to plan the following day. So you sort of had 2 plans ready to go for the next day, whether you won or whether you lost. So it was good that we were able to roll out what we were doing when we won. And then we had about 30,000 people crammed onto Punt Road Oval for a presentation of the premiership winning team. And we'd also won the VFL grand final that year too. So there was a bit going on.
Big year.
Yeah.
And then you take the cup on tour around the country and...
Doesn't stop.
Doesn't stop for a while. And then 2020 was the complete opposite. I was at home.
Yeah.
So, wishing I was able to do all that again. It was a lot of work, very tiring, but so rewarding. And, being someone who grew up adoring footy and, watching my team win premierships, as a supporter. But then it's just a whole complete different experience when you're inside the 4 walls of a footy club.
In that moment when Richmond's winning a flag, how do you balance the ability to be professional and do your job, but also be a footy fan as well and enjoy the moment too? Because I'm picturing that you might be sitting there after the game going, oh my gosh, this is amazing, we've won a premiership, and then at the same time you're probably like, oh crap, I've got a job to do, I've got to go over here. How do you strike that balance?
We were pretty lucky. It's such a big thing that, they obviously tell you to sort of take it all in and enjoy the moment and the experience. So, when we got to go down to the rooms and be there for the team song, and you sort of just get around all your colleagues and, really get amongst it. But, yeah, then, like I said, we just had to go back to the club and roll all those things out for a couple of hours, and then we did get to go and celebrate for a little bit. But I think there's just in you and yourself, you sort of know, all right, it's time to get some work done just to make sure that you are putting on the best event possible for the following day, but at the same time very much enjoyed it. And it's all work that you can't really get to do unless you win a flag.
Yep.
So it was a pretty cool experience. Speaking
of getting the administration involved in celebrating a premiership, and you mentioned singing the song as a club, in 2020 when Richmond won, we had organised to do a podcast interview with Kevin Wilson, the data analyst.
Kev, yeah.
And And I'm watching the grand final. It's up in Queensland, and the camera is zooming in on two Richmond legends arm in arm. Trent Cotchin and Dustin Martin, 6 premierships between them, best and fairest, Brownlow's, the rest of it. And there's 3 people in frame. You got Koch, Dusty. The third one is Kevin Wilson, the analyst. And I was like, oh my God, that's our guy.
Yep.
We're chatting with him tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I got my phone out and started taking photos of the TV, started pumping up the podcast, like, hey, tomorrow this guy's coming on. And so
man.
I know, I just couldn't believe how perfectly framed he'd been in that moment. So, yeah, I do like our footy clubs are very welcoming with everyone involved.
Obviously, we couldn't get everyone into the circle for that because there's 100 and something admin staff. But 2020 being the unique year that it was, only a limited amount of staff could go up to the hub. But no, I do remember seeing Kev on the TV, very much so when they were singing the song. So good on him. Good on him.
Was there there would have been a bit of internal chat going on in WhatsApp groups with that?
Yeah, no, and, there were staff up there keeping us updated on everything that was sort of going on post the win. So, that was definitely thrown around a few times.
That was always a big thing in cricket, like if you end up in the back of the broadcast on Wednesday or whatever.
Straight to WhatsApp.
I cop messages all the time. I somehow managed to get on broadcast quite a lot. So, yes, very well aware of that.
Yeah, awesome. Shout out to Kev. He'd be listening. One of the great fans of the show. Let's talk about some of the skills you need to do your job. What are the, say, 3 most essential skills that you need to be a gunner what you do?
I think number one, it's probably the skill for most jobs, but organisation. So, you have 11 home games for the men, 5 for the women, and sometimes they'll be back to back. Sometimes you might even get 3 home games in a row. So you just need to make sure that you're staying on top. And when I mentioned checklists, that's my way of being really organised, and it gives me a snapshot of just how much work I still have to do. So, 3 weeks out is when I'll start really prepping sort of a normal match day that's not a marquee game. But then if you've got 3 in a row, so I've got what I need to do 3 weeks before, what I need to do 2 weeks before, week out, week of. So that's my way of staying really organised. But it can get overwhelming when you've got people asking you questions about, and when you do have so many games in a row, it's hard to sort of keep tabs sometimes on what's happening at what game. So, yes, organisation is a big one. Just working with different people, or teamwork. So you work with so many people from so many different organisations and stakeholders, plus internally as well. So like I mentioned before, I pretty much will communicate with almost every department at the footy club. And everyone is different. So everyone works in a different way, everyone communicates in a different way. So just being able to adapt to that and work around other people as well is a big one. And then communication. So especially when it comes to game day and everyone needs to be on the same page. I'm lucky on a game day I'll have a floor manager with me. So if I need to say something up to production, that gets done pretty quickly. But yeah, if something goes wrong on a match day, or something that, I might get asked a question that I'm not well aware of, I've got to quickly communicate with all of those in other teams quite quickly. So probably say they're the 3 skills.
Nice. And I feel like it's one of those things as well, until you dive into it and get the sense of, how fast-paced it is and who you got to work with, it's hard to really appreciate it, I guess. Yeah. Are there any people who you've learnt a lot from along the journey at Richmond?
I'd probably just say, my team. So my manager, she's been around for, she's done a lot more seasons than I have. So learning from her has been a really great experience. And then something that I like to do as well is I personally just like to look at what other clubs and other sporting codes are doing. Footy is a whole different world to NFL, Super Bowl's on today. What they can do is next level compared to, what we can do here. So I think I just like to learn from other people in other sporting codes as well, and see what they get up to and, what we could potentially implement in the future as well.
Nice. Finally, what advice would you give to your younger self wanting to get into this industry and get into the role?
I would say yes to opportunities and give things a go, but noting not to burn yourself out. Because I know when you're trying to get into the sporting industry and, lots of placement hours, you're trying to really just put your name out there and show everyone what you can do, but it can get really tiring when you've got a lot going on, such as study, such as your actual job outside of work, outside of, trying to get into the sporting industry. And burning yourself out can be really detrimental to a lot of other aspects in your life. So that's what I would say.
Nice.
And saying that as someone who's also got a side hustle
Yes.
on top of that.
Yes.
I can imagine that your plate will be quite full.
Yes. No, my New Year's resolution was to start saying no to things because I tend to be a big yes person. And that's not saying like no to, what I get asked to do at work at all. It's just sort of prioritising having some time for yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Before we wrap, any other episodes people can be listening to relating to footy or fan engagement or?
Yeah. Well, we mentioned Kevin Wilson. I think he's episode 36-ish, way back in the early days in 2020. So if you want to hear what he was up to after the premiership win, you can go back and listen to that. Rana Hussein, we also mentioned. She's episode 238, I believe. 200 episodes later, almost.
Good memory.
So another Richmond person. And then in the fan engagement space, we did an interview with Aaron Wharton when he was at the Sydney Sixers, start of 2021, which is about 58 or so. So there's a few people there that people can listen to.
Nice. How's his memory? It's pretty
I
good.
know. Amazed.
They're all like time stamped in my mind.
Yeah.
So I can kind of like go back and figure it out.
Very good.
Yeah. Shayla, thanks so much for coming in. It's been just great hearing about your role and your journey, and pretty keen to get some Tiger games next year to see how it all happens and see you in action. So appreciate you coming in and having a chat to us. I'm sure there's plenty of people who have learned a lot from today. So thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me, and hopefully see you both at a Richmond game soon.
Absolutely.
Guys, it is time now for Ask SportsGrad, where every week we answer a question directly from our community. If you'd like to ask us a question, first become a SportsGrad member. You can head to our website to join our waitlist for our next drop, which will be in early May. And you can add your question to the channel named Ask SportsGrad. Now, this week we had a question around phone interviews, and in particular, short phone interviews. So one of our members said, what do I need to be preparing for a 15-minute phone interview? And I must say they are a unique facet of the job search and the job application process. So there's a few things here that I thought might help you if you're in a position where you are going for a job and they want to sort of do a phone screening. I think that's probably a better way to put this. It's not an interview per se, but it's their way to sort of screen the interviews coming through who are applying. So I guess the first thing to note is a phone screening is really there for them to suss you out a bit before offering you a potentially a longer interview. So it's not about sort of telling your life story. It's about just being super succinct and sort of thinking, I've got 15 minutes here to impress. I've got to be short and sharp and to the point. And what I'd say about that is, number one is absolutely have your why figured out. So why do you want that job? Why are you applying? Why does it interest you? Be really, really prepared to answer that question, because that's likely what they're going to ask you first up after a little bit of small talk. The other thing I'll say is bring the energy on the call. You don't want to seem flat. You want to really, make them notice you. And if they're on a call and they can feel someone's energy coming through, they've got that enthusiasm, they're going to want to speak to you again. They're going to want to interview you in person. So absolutely bring the energy. The next thing I'll say is absolutely have 2 or 3 questions ready to ask. So this is often when people get a little bit stuck as to what to ask and how to approach it. One of my favorite questions to ask in an interview is, what is the biggest challenge that the team's facing at this point? That question might be saved for an in-person interview, and it's less around, the nitty-gritties of the role. But I think on a phone screening, it's probably an opportunity to ask questions around like what the pay is, or what is the work from home requirements? Do I need to be in the office? Just getting a little bit of an understanding about the periphery of the role and understand a little bit what it's going to be like, a day in the life of doing that role. So absolutely have some questions answered, and that contributes to the energy that you're going to bring on that call. The last thing I'll say is see this phone screening as a way to get a little bit more comfortable before the real deal in person. I know from experience, like I've had a few phone calls before interviews, and knowing that I've essentially met one of the interviewers on that call gives you a little bit of confidence and makes you feel a bit more comfortable. So really use it as an opportunity to get a little bit comfortable, meet the person, ask a little bit how their day is, whatever it might be, but see that as an opportunity for you to increase that comfortability when you do get a job interview, fingers crossed. So there's probably 3 or 4 little tips that you can use for a phone screening, and hopefully that can help you out in the upcoming one coming up. In the meantime, though, if you'd like to ask us a question or ask our friends in sport a question, as I mentioned, join our waitlist to become a SportsGrad member. Every week you get access to networking opportunities, events, exclusive content, job boards, career resources, all there to help you excel in your career and beyond. So head to our website, sportsgrad.com.au, to join our waitlist. And if you know someone who would love the pod, please send it on and give it a share. You can find us on LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, whatever social channel you're on. We are there, and give us some love with a rating of 5 stars. If you enjoy the show, it really helps. So thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Hey friends, one last thing before you go. If you really want to make an impact in sport, then subscribe to the SportsGrad newsletter. Inside, we share all the latest job openings and networking events, so you're always aware of opportunities to land a job and grow your network. Plus, we share a Q&A with a professional on how they grow their career in sport. Here we talk about things like how they moved overseas or negotiated their salary or landed a new job or promotion, made a career change, and so much more. It's kind of like a little boost of inspiration in your inbox before the weekend. So if you're like us, you're career driven and you're keen to progress quickly, you're going to love the SportsGrad newsletter. To get it, head to sportsgrad.com.au/newsletter to subscribe, or follow the link in the show notes. See you next time.